Good morning from Pittsburgh. My name is Rick Thorpe, and I am the Executive Director of the Center for International Legal Education here at the University of Pittsburgh School of Law, or Pitt Law, as we call it for short. As Executive Director of CILE, I'm responsible for the administration of our LL.M. degree program for foreign educated lawyers. I sit on the admissions committee for our LL.M. program, and every day of the academic year, I meet with our LL.M. students to talk with them about their academic programs and their career plans. I'm glad that you could join us for this webinar, where I hope to give you some basic information about our LL.M. program, explain why I hope you'll consider spending your LL.M. year here with us in Pittsburgh, and answer your questions. I plan to talk about the Pitt Law LLM for about half an hour, and then we'll answer questions that we've received either by email prior to this webinar or through the chat function that's available through our teleconferencing software. Now, I suspect that many of you watching probably already know that you want to get an LLM degree, and you're just trying to decide, all right, where am I going to go to get my LLM? I know, however, from talking with the foreign trained lawyers who call me to express interest in our program, that some of you may still be weighing whether you need to get an LLM degree at all. That's always a decision that only you as an individual can make. But I know from talking with many of my LLM alumni that in many countries, an LLM degree from the US or another common law jurisdiction is almost a requirement for advancement in their careers. The LLM can be a valuable credential in many legal careers. If you come from a civil law background, it shows that you have substantive knowledge of the workings of a common law legal system like that found here in the US or in the United Kingdom. It demonstrates that you were able to hold your own in a tough, competitive English language legal environment for a year. And it shows your commitment to being a lawyer who can practice across national boundaries, something that is absolutely necessary for any legal career today in this globalized economy in which we live. All of these are good reasons to get an LLM degree, but why a Pitt Law LLM in particular? Over the course of this webinar, I want to tell you what I think are the special strengths of our LLM program. Our relatively small size guarantees you individualized attention. We can use that one-on-one focus to design a curriculum for you that's uniquely tailored to your interests and your career objectives. You'll study side by side with our USJD students, getting an authentic US law school experience. You won't be set off to one side in LLM-only classes. In your classes, you're going to be taught by top legal academics as well as practitioners. You'll have a wide range of opportunities for engagement, both inside and outside of the classroom. And you'll live for a year in Pittsburgh, which is regarded as a model for cities that are transforming themselves from the old industrial model to the new economy. And it's also a really fun, exciting, and yet affordable place to live. A few words about the history of our LLM program. Pitt Law has had an LLM program for over 20 years now, always exclusively directed towards training foreign educated lawyers. Each of the classes that we've put together over the past 20 plus years has been both talented and diverse. Since our foundation in 1995, we've educated 290 LLM students from over 70 countries, spanning every continent except for Australia and Antarctica. Throughout our LLM program's history, it's been administered by our Center for International Legal Education, a center within the law school which is committed to providing a global perspective on legal education and scholarship. Our center not only administers our LLM and SJD programs for foreign trained lawyers, but we also have programs promoting international law to our USJD students, as well as programs for our faculty. Pitt Law is committed to being an international law school. Having an LLM program for foreign trained lawyers isn't often a separate box for Pitt Law. Instead, it's part of the core values of both Pitt Law and the University of Pittsburgh. Now, if you divide 270 students by 22 years, it'll be obvious that we don't have the kinds of gigantic 200, 300, 400 person LLM classes that you find at some other LLM programs in the US. We've deliberately kept our class size relatively small. In recent years, the average size of each LLM class has been in the range of 15 to 20 students. For each of our classes, we try to select a really interesting, diverse group of students. We look for a range of geographic and cultural backgrounds, work experience, education, and the like. We want to see academic promise in all of our students. But speaking as a member of our admissions committee, I don't just look at transcripts. I look at the whole person when I'm making an admissions decision. It may well be that there will be a candidate who perhaps has, less than stellar grades, although acceptable grades, but has an incredibly interesting work history, or who has real promise uh, for what they're going to bring back to their home country after they get their LLM degree. I may find that person more interesting than a candidate who has absolutely stellar straight A's, but otherwise has a very boring, bland personal statement or doesn't convey to me the same promise. Again, we look at the whole person. We're not just looking at numbers and checking boxes when we make our admissions decisions. In our center that administers the LLM program, we have 3 staff members who are responsible for that program. They're pictured over at the right-hand side of this slide. At the top, Professor Ronald Brand, our academic director, myself in the middle, lower right-hand corner, Austin Levo, our program administrator. These are 3 people whose top priority in life is the happiness and success of our LLM students. With 3 dedicated staff on the one hand and 15 to 20 or so students on the other, you can be assured you're going to get a lot of individual hands-on attention from the staff at our center. In terms of putting together your curriculum, when you're deciding what courses to take, I'm going to sit down with each of you by phone during the summer before you arrive, and then in person after you get here. And I'm going to talk with each of you individually at length about what are the subjects that interest you? What do you want to do with your degree? What are your career plans? I want to get to know you very well as an individual so that we can then sit down and figure out, well, which courses are going to be the best suited to meet your interests, to meet your career needs. To be clear, even though you have the advantage of having us, the 3 dedicated staff members, you're also going to have access to all the other resources of the law school that are available to our students generally, including the ability to consult with personnel in our career development office. Now, this individual one-on-one attention is important because we don't believe in cramming your curriculum into a bunch of one-size-fits-all boxes that may or may not be really suited for your particular interests and needs. That's why we have a single LLM degree. We don't have specialized LLM degrees here. Our LLM degree has fairly simple requirements that allow you a great deal of flexibility in designing a personal course of study. The basic requirement of the LLM program, you have to take a minimum of 24 credit hours to graduate. For those of you who may not be familiar with the U.S. System, here at Pitt Law, most courses are usually semester-long courses that are about 3 credit hours apiece. Occasionally, there are a few classes that are 4 credit hours. There are a few smaller classes that are 2 credit hours or even 1 credit hours, but most are 3 credit hours. So translating that into the number of class subjects you take in a term, if you're taking roughly 12 to 15 credit hours in a term, that means you're going to be taking roughly 4, maybe 5 classes each semester. Now, of the required 24 credit hours, the majority are going to be in subjects that you choose yourself. So if you want to specialize in a particular field, say business law, then what we'll do is we'll put together a set of electives that meet that specialization, that give you a transcript that reflect that particular specialized interest that you have, perhaps contracts, international business law, international commercial arbitration, or other business-related courses, business organizations on the law of corporations here in the States. It may well be, though, that you want to go general. Perhaps you want to take a general course of study because you want to be better prepared to sit for a bar examination in a state like New York or another U.S. jurisdiction that allows students to sit for the bar with an LLM degree. or perhaps you just want the broadest possible exposure to the U.S. legal system. We can put together that course of study for you as well. What's important to us is what you need from your LLM degree. Now, there are a few courses that are required of all LLM students. One of these in the fall semester is our Introduction to American Law course. This gives you a broad overview of the U.S. legal system. It's a great accompaniment to and preparation for the other courses that you'll be taking during your LLM year here at Pitt Law. In the spring, you'll meet once a week for our LLM colloquium. You also required, like our USJD students, to take a legal writing and analysis class. This is a class that focuses on teaching you how to write American legal papers, legal briefs, and memorandums for an American legal audience. Finally, as one of your electives, you're going to need to write a substantive research paper during your year in the program. Now, of those courses that I've just described, only two, the Introduction to American Law class and the LLM colloquium, only two are LLM only classes where the only students in that classroom are LLM students. Every other class, including legal writing and analysis, is a class that you are going to take together with, on an equal footing with, our American JD students. Your electives, you'll be able to choose from a broad range of classes that are generally available to our U.S. students. They range all the way from 1L courses on standard introductory topics like contracts, torts, property, to specialized courses on subjects that are as varied as, international arbitration, U.S. constitutional law, post-conflict justice. There are seminars that range the whole gamut from law and economics on the one hand to seminars on gender and the law on the other. You're going to quickly become part of the larger law school community by virtue of the fact that you're taking all your classes together with our broader student population. One thing that's very important to Professor Brand and me here in the center running our LLM program is we never want our LLM students to feel or act as if they're somehow off to the side, sheltered in an LLM only cocoon. We want you to be part of the life of the law school as a whole. So let me say a few words about the larger law school. The University of Pittsburgh School of Law has been in existence for over a century. We've been in our current building pictured on that slide since the 1970s. We have around 500 students and over 40 full-time teaching faculty. In addition to the 40 full-time faculty, we also have many adjunct faculty. These are partners from law firms here in Pittsburgh or working in in-house legal departments in corporations who come in to teach courses that have a more practical slant. For example, we have a couple of law firm partners from downtown who every year teach a course on doing mergers and acquisitions transactions in the U.S. They will talk about the nuts and bolts of how you put together an acquisition deal here in the U.S. Everything from putting together a term sheet and doing due diligence to actually drafting the merger agreement and closing on the transaction. We have partners from downtown who teach courses on trial practice, on how it is that you actually argue a case before a jury in a U.S. courtroom. Every year, we have more than 150 courses beyond the 1L core. So more than 150 courses on specialized subjects in addition to those basic subjects like contracts, regulation, and torts. Our full-time faculty it's a tremendously, fantastically talented and renowned group of scholars. Their teaching and scholarship covers the full range of legal subjects and schools of thought. On this slide, I've put up just a few of our faculty, just among those who have a particular interest in international and comparative law. Yelena Bayless, who teaches on post-conflict justice. Our academic director, Professor Ronald Brand, who's a world-renowned expert on international arbitration law and is, in fact, a member of the United States negotiating team for the Hague Conventions on Arbitration. Vivian Curran, specialist in comparative law. Harry Fleckner at the lower left hand, who's a renowned expert on the Convention on the International Sales sale of goods. Haider Hamoudi, Bottom Center, a specialist on Islamic law who helped to co-write the Constitution in Iraq. And Matyangai Sirleaf, a specialist on transitional justice. And these are just ones I could fit on the slide. I mean, others include Rhonda Wasserman, who's a world famous expert in transnational litigation. Focusing more on domestic U.S. law, our faculty are similarly well known and respected. Jules LaBelle has received wide recognition for his work on ending solitary confinement. Jasmine Rose is a leader in exploring the role of race in the law. David Harris regularly appears on national television and is quoted in the press on matters concerning things as broad as police behavior, law enforcement, national security issues in the law. And again, I could go on and on with the experts that we have here on our faculty. For example, we've got a young scholar, David Thaw, who's a leading expert on cybersecurity in the law. In short, your year at Pitt Law is going to give you the opportunity to learn from and to interact with scholars at the top of their fields, both nationally and internationally. Now, I've already talked a little bit about what the shape of your LLM year at Pitt Law will look like in terms of the classes that you can take. Now, I'd like to say a little bit more about what you can expect to see and do during your year here at Pitt Law. We start off every year for our LLM students with 2 years of orientation, 2 weeks of orientation before the start of classes. The first week of orientation gives you a chance to get ready for the Pitt Law classroom before classes start. We give you a crash course just for LLM students on how to deal with things like the Socratic method of teaching, that uniquely U.S. approach to law school instruction that bases a lot of what goes on in the classroom on back and forth questions and answers between the professor and students. We also teach you how to deal with taking notes in classes, how to prepare for your writing assignments in classes. We also use that first week of orientation to help you settle in to Pitt Law and to Pittsburgh as a whole. We give you some general information about the program, and our program administrator, Austin Lebo, will take the LLM class as a whole over to the administrative offices of the university to make sure that you have your IDs, student IDs. He'll walk you over to a local bank branch so that those of you who don't already have a bank account here can get set up with a bank account. He'll walk you over to a local cell phone provider where he arranges for meetings with the staff there, sets aside time to help you get set up with a cell phone so that we can quickly get you adjusted to living in Pittsburgh so that you can focus on your classes. Again, this comes back to the sort of one-on-one attention that you're going to get in your program that you may not be able to get from a larger sized LLM class program. During your second week of orientation, you're going to attend orientation such meetings together with our entering JD students. Those general orientation sessions, again, they'll provide you with more information about the resources that are available here at Pitt Law. They'll provide you with more preparation for the law school classroom for question and answer in class, for taking notes, for preparing for exams, and the like. Now, it's not all work in orientation. One day of orientation for our LLM students, we always set aside for a fun trip. We take the whole LLM class out to the Laurel Highlands, which is about an hour and a half outside of Pittsburgh. We take you for a tour of Frank Lloyd Wright's Falling Water, a true American architectural landmark out there in the hills of southwest Pennsylvania. And then we always have a lunch together at a bread and breakfast in the countryside that provides a great opportunity for us to just sit informally around the lunch table for you to get to know your fellow LLM students better and to get to know me, Professor Brandon Austin, better. As we move further on into the fall, we have a variety of other events to help introduce you to the larger Pitt community. We have a variety of receptions where we'll introduce you to Pitt Law faculty, to our students, to others in the university. We have a variety of other events during the fall. One that's coming up that I'm really looking forward to is we always try to arrange for our LLM students to have the opportunity to go spend Thanksgiving Day having an authentic American Thanksgiving dinner at the home of a Pitt Law faculty member or staff member. Moving into the spring, in the spring, you'll have a variety of events for the LLM students. We try to always have an opportunity for our LLM students to make a short presentation to the Pitt Law community on a topic or issue relating to your home country's legal system. If you want, you can try out for our LLM moot arbitration team, which goes to Washington, D.C. to compete in a competition against LLM teams from across the country at American University. This past spring, our LLM team took home first place, triumphing in the competition over teams from schools like Georgetown and the University of Pennsylvania. Now, a highlight of the year for all of our LLM students is every spring we take the whole LLM class on a trip to Washington, D.C. There you'll sit in on a session at the Supreme Court. You'll take a tour of the Supreme Court, a tour of the White House, a tour of the Capitol, as well as visiting other monuments in D.C. We also always try to take in some sort of cultural event at the Kennedy Center, whether it's a symphony, an opera, or a play. Finally, at the end of the spring semester, we always have a number of events to celebrate your achievements as you graduate with your Pitt Law LLM. Now, the Pitt Law LLM experience doesn't have to end with graduation. Over the more than 2 decades of our program's life, we've been fortunate to be able to place our LLM graduates into summer internships here in Pittsburgh that have taken their classroom knowledge of U.S. law and added to it some practical hands-on experience of what the U.S. legal system means in practice by working in internships in local law firms, in-house legal departments, and other organizations here in Pittsburgh or elsewhere. Just from this past summer, if you look along the pictures on the side there, our graduate from May, Evelina, spent the summer working in a law firm downtown, Sherrard German. James worked for a federal judge sitting in the Western District of Pennsylvania. Neva was a research fellow at Pace University in New York. The internships that we've worked to help our LLM students get, typically they last 1 to 3 months. They're usually unpaid. Now, there are a number of U.S. immigration visa requirements and restrictions that apply to students that can affect a student's ability to do an internship after graduation. But we in the center work very closely with the visa specialists in our university's Office of International Services to make sure that our students are on track to get the approvals that they'll need if a summer internship is something that you want to do. What next? Well, whatever you can envisage as a career, the Pitt Law LLM can give you the tools to accomplish it. The career paths of our LLM alumni are as varied as the courses of study that they pursued while they were students here. Our center puts out a newsletter every year. You can see the link there. It's also linked on our LLM web pages and on our Facebook page. In this year's newsletter, I had the pleasure of interviewing a group of our LLM alumni about their careers after graduation and how important the Pitt Law LLM has been to their success in those careers after graduation. Just, looking at the pictures of the folks that I interviewed along the bottom of this slide, it gives you a sense of the variety of the careers that our Pitt Law LLMs have gone on to. Starting from the lower left-hand side, we've got Enos, who's an in-house antitrust counsel at Daimler, the German car and truck manufacturer. We have a professor at Wuhan University, the leading law school, one of the leading law schools in China, an associate in corporate practice at Dentons in Doha. We have Zaina, who administers legal development programs in Kosovo. Yelena, who's an arbitration attorney at White & Case in Paris. Joel, who's an officer at the Asia Development Bank. Maurice, who's a professor at a law school in Kenya. And the list goes on and on. A member of parliament in Kosovo, widely reported on lawyer in Moscow. We have LL.M alumni working across the globe for firms, governments, NGOs. Now, I'd like to turn back for a few minutes to talk about your LL.M year here at Pitt and say a little bit about the larger university in which you'll be studying and the city in which you'll live. The University of Pittsburgh is one of the world's premier research universities, founded in 1787. We're the oldest continuously chartered institution of higher education west of the Appalachians. We have a total student population on our Pittsburgh campus of over 28,000. Of those, over 3,000 are international students who have gathered in Pittsburgh from all corners of the globe, drawn here by Pitt's world-renowned programs, not only in law, but also in medicine, engineering, computer sciences, and the other sciences, arts, and humanities. These are programs that have helped to make the University of Pittsburgh one of the leaders in our city's transformation from a center of steel and heavy industry in the 19th and 20th centuries to our role today as a leader in high-tech robotics, software, and biotechnology. Pittsburgh has come a long way since its days as a smoky steel town. It's now a city of leading edge startups, of ethnic restaurants, and excitingly revitalized neighborhoods. It's a city of grand historic cultural institutions like the Pittsburgh Symphony and the Carnegie Museums on the one hand, and numerous smaller music venues, galleries, and other cultural institutions on the other. It's a city where you can kayak around downtown on our three rivers during the day and enjoy a vibrant nightlife at night. And for all of this, well, it has all of the benefits that you associate with a large historic metropolis. It's also a city that to me feels very compact and human scale. And it's a very affordable city. We're regularly ranked as one of the most affordable cities in the U.S. to live in. Our housing costs, rental costs, and the like are much lower than you're going to find in cities like Boston, New York, or Washington. Now, before I turn to answering some of the questions that I've received either by email before these webinars or by chat during the webinars, I want to say a few words about our admissions process. We operate on a rolling admissions cycle. We don't have a firm deadline by which we have to receive applications, but we do recommend, in order for your application to receive the fullest possible consideration, that you try to get your application completed by March 31 of the spring before the fall in which you want to start. In terms of our requirements for admission, we do have a minimum English competency requirement. The minimum score that we require for the TOEFL exam on the internet-based version of that test is a 90 or a 6.5 on the IELTS. Now, having said that, I should say that although a 90 is minimum score in the TOEFL, generally we hope to see scores that are 100 or above, simply because, as I've mentioned, the U.S. law school experience is unique. It's very different from what you may have experienced in your law schools in your home countries. It's very much based on in the classroom, the Socratic method. There's a heavy emphasis on your ability to speak during class, to answer the professor's questions, to contribute to discussion in a seminar. Our reading loads also tend to be fairly heavy. And that means that although we have students who have had TOEFL scores that are less than 100 who have wound up being quite successful here at Pitt Law, students do tend to struggle a bit more at first if they have a TOEFL score that's lower than 100. You can apply to our program either directly or else through the Law School Admissions Council site. We do not require the Law School Admissions test for admission to our program. I mentioned earlier that living in Pittsburgh is relatively inexpensive, and I like to think that same affordability factor applies to our tuition. Um, I know for students coming from countries, coming from outside the U.S., sometimes U.S. tuitions can seem astronomically high. But in fact, our tuition at $35,500 a year this year ranks very well by comparison to many of our competing LLM programs. Many of those are now uh, well over $50,000 a year just for tuition alone. We've been able to keep our tuition rates from growing by that degree over the past few years. So we like to think we've kept it quite affordable. We do have limited fellowship assistance available. We normally make our financial aid decisions after we've made all of our admissions decisions. To the extent that we have financial aid available, we're going to award it based on a combination of demonstrated financial need that a student has gone out, they've tried to access all the third-party funding that's available. They're making full use of their own and their family resources, and there's still some gap left. Combination of demonstrated financial need on the one hand and extraordinary academic promise on the other. And so with that, I think I'll turn to answering such questions as we've received. I know I received a number of questions by email as well as by chat. I don't know, have we had any questions by chat yet for this session?
We have. So could you refer them to where they could get information about scholarships?
As I mentioned, we do have limited financial aid available through our program. We generally recommend that students also, look for what government or third-party sources of funding may be available to them in their home countries. When you submit your application to our program, if you're going to be seeking financial aid, we would ask that you submit on a separate page, either uploading to LSAC or sending it to us by email. A short letter stating that you're going to be looking for financial aid, describing the resources that you currently have available, the gap that exists between those resources and what the cost is for a year of our program. And then after we've made our admissions decisions, we'll sit down and take all of that into account in assessing financial aid awards. Now, one thing I do always advise our students, potential LLM applicants, to do is to contact the office or visit the website of Education USA in your home country. Because I find that Education USA and its offices can be really the best resource for students in terms of knowing what scholarship programs, fellowship programs are available for students from a given country who are looking to come to study in the U.S. for an LLM program. You can usually find that through the website of the Embassy of the United States or consulate in your home country.
When does the program start?
The program usually starts in late August of each year. I think our orientation, actually this year, I think our orientation started around the 15th or 16th of August. Unfortunately, my memory on dates has been going with age, but generally you'll come here mid-August, 2 weeks of orientation. Classes will start at the end of August. One of the frequently asked questions that I have up on the slide here is, I know often students ask, well, can I start the program in spring semester starting in January? And unfortunately, no. The way our LLM program is set up, it's really designed to be taken over the course of a full year, starting in the fall. Introduction to American Law is only offered in the fall. Legal writing and analysis is a course that is a full year course that stretches over the course of a full year. So it's just not practicable to start in the spring. And frankly, we think it's good to have the whole class start at the same time because it helps you to build those bonds with your fellow classmates. You're going through the same experience together at the same time.
How many hours a week is required to be in school?
How many hours a week? Well, the generally the number of semester hours that you're taking each semester is going to translate loosely into the number of hours that you're going to spend in the classroom each week. So for a 3 credit hour class, that's usually going to be 3 hours in the classroom. Say you're going to spend 12, 15 hours actually sitting in classrooms. There's going to be a lot more time, though, that you're going to be spending working on homework, on your writing assignments outside the classroom. A full-time program here in terms of classes is truly a full-time endeavor for students.
How many classes or programs do you
Classes or programs? Well, as I mentioned, I mean, we have the full range of basic subject matter courses like contracts and torts. We have every year 150 courses on top of those basic courses. Say that works out to maybe 100 and I'm not sure what don't quote me on exact numbers, but 155, 160 courses over the course of the full year. In terms of programs, for the LLM program, we only have a single LLM degree, a single program, which is our general LLM for foreign trained lawyers. Within that program, though, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, I mean, you can build pretty much any specialty on a transcript within that general LLM that you can imagine. I mean, we have just the full range. I struggle to think of a subject area that isn't covered in some year by classes here, whether it's intellectual property or constitutional law or civil procedure, preparing students to understand how the U.S. courtroom works. I think the full range of possible subject matters are covered by our classes. And you can, if you go to the Pitt Law website and look under academics in the menu at the top, you'll see that you can pull down on the menu. There is a page for each of the past 4 semesters, including this coming spring semester, that lists all of the courses that have been offered during this semester. So if you go to the webpage and look at that, that really gives you a sense of just the incredible breadth of subject matter that's covered by our classes here. Okay. In terms of other questions that I've been asked by email or in phone conversations with prospective students over the past few months, some of the other questions I've been asked, students ask me, will an LLM from Pitt Law let me seek admission to legal practice in the U.S.? We have had a number of students who have been successful in taking the bar in New York. New York is a jurisdiction that tends to be the most friendly to students who are looking to gain admission to practice in the U.S. by sitting for a U.S. state bar after getting an LLM degree. We can set up for you a course of study that meets the requirements of the New York bar to sit for their exam. The one thing I would always caution anyone who's thinking about using an LLM from Pitt Law or from any other LLM program in the U.S. About using that LLM to sit for a bar, I caution you to start putting together the paperwork for it now before you come to the U.S. Go to the bar examiner's site, look at what they require for paperwork, because when you apply to qualify to take the exam, they are going to ask you for things like original transcripts from all of the universities and law schools in your home country that you attended, certifications from your employers back in your home country, a whole range of paperwork that's really difficult to put together once you're here in the U.S. It's much easier to do it when you're still in your home country. That paperwork all has to be submitted very early in the year, usually by October 1, in order to qualify to sit for the bar exam in the summer after you graduate. So important to start planning for that now if that's something you want to do. We have another question.
We do. If someone has recently moved from Europe about 6 months ago, finished law school in their own country, and had taken the bar exam, is it a good idea to study the LLM or maybe perhaps study to be a paralegal?
So this is someone who has who lived in Europe. You're saying who has moved back to their home country or moved to the U.S.
Here in the U.S.
I mean, if we're talking about the choice between getting an LLM, sitting for the bar exam, and potentially being able to work as a lawyer versus working, simply taking whatever education you have and working as a paralegal in the States, certainly one can build a good career as a paralegal here in the States, and it would then, you wouldn't have to invest the money that you're going to have to invest in an LLM degree and in sitting for the bar exam. It does limit, however, what you can do with the legal education that you've already received. You'll not be able to do a lot of the work that you have to have a law degree and bar admission here in the U.S. to do, whether it's sitting and advising clients or appearing in court or perhaps setting up your own practice. There are very strict limits on what you can do if you do not have a law degree, and there are some very strong penalties and punishments for those who overstep the line here in the U.S. and do more than they're allowed to do without a law degree.
She's living here in the U.S.
So, I would strongly consider making that additional investment. If you're here in the U.S. and you want to be working in a legal field going forward, I would strongly consider making that investment in a U.S. law degree, LLM degree in this case. Some other questions that I've received, can I transfer credits from the LLM program into a JD program? Yes, we've actually had that happen for a number of our students here. We actually, this past summer, 3 of our LLM alumni who went on to transfer into the JD program graduated this spring, and they took the PA bar and they all passed it, and we're all very proud of them. So it's definitely something that's possible, but obviously the ability to move from the LLM program into the JD program depends greatly on your grades during your LLM year. One of the things that makes it more possible for LLM students here to transfer into the JD program than might be the case in some other programs is that, as I mentioned, I mean, it's very important to us that our that our LLM students not be segregated in any fashion from our JD students. One aspect of that is that our LLM students are graded in exactly the same way as their JD students. They're graded on exactly the same scale as our JD students, and that means that the coursework, other than the LLM, especially LLM courses, that coursework can transfer over onto JD transfer. Another question I often receive is, can I take the program part-time? Answer to that is maybe, but usually not for most of the individuals who are foreign trained lawyers seeking to enter our program, simply because most student visas require you to study on a full-time basis. The individuals who have done part-time study with us have tended to be either foreign trained lawyers who had already obtained permanent residency here in the US, or perhaps they were here on a spouse's visa and therefore their visa status allowed them to take part-time. But for the most part, we expect that students will take our program part-time. The ability to do it we expect that our students will take our program full-time. The ability to do it part-time is really dependent on visa status and on the discretion of myself and our academic director looking at it to decide whether we think part-time study is appropriate. One more question?
Speaking of visas, does an L2 visa allow for you to study here in the United States?
And I have to say I'm not familiar with what the restrictions are surrounding you said an L2? I'm not familiar with the L2 visa and its restrictions. If you can send us your email through the chat function, I could consult with our visa specialist here at the university and get back to you with an answer on that. Well, we're coming up to the 50-minute mark here and the end of our program. If we don't have any more questions by Chad, I think I will end the session at this point. But I do want to emphasize, I mean, we do have much more information on our website at law.pitt.edu/LLM. But really, if you have any questions or concerns, I always look forward to getting prospective applicants' emails. And my email that you can reach me at is richard.thorpe@pitt.edu. You can also feel free to either call me at 412-383-6754, or, I always love to be able to do a Skype teleconference and talk with prospective applicants face by face, even if virtually through a camera, and talk about any questions, concerns that you may have about your LLM study, planning an LLM year here in the U.S. So I hope to hear from you further in the near future. I look forward to talking with everyone who participated in this session or who is going to view the archived version of this webinar on YouTube. Please send me your emails, give me a call, and I hope to be reviewing applications from you soon. Thank you very much and have a good day from here in Pittsburgh. Bye now.